Ladies and gentlemen, to provide insights on how markets and farmers can work together, founder and co-director of the Common Market, Haile Johnston, Mid-Atlantic Deputy Director of the Common Market, Jillian, and panel moderator, Deputy Director, Local Food Research and Development Division, USDA Agricultural Marketing Service, Debra Tropp.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to start by just reflecting a little bit on yesterday as I introduce our panelists here and their organization. When I was putting my notes together this morning, I was thinking about some of the comments that Walter Robb made last night. And it occurred to me that one of his takeaways was a perfect frame for talking about representatives of Common Market today. He said, the hallmarks of local food systems are transparency, accountability, and responsibility. And I think you're not going to find an organization that is more representative of those principles than Common Market. But before I ask our panelists something about the organization, let me start with a very brief introduction of who they are. They were launched in 2008 as a nonprofit food distributor. I assume you're still a nonprofit organization?
Right.
With a mission to connect communities with local sustainable farm foods. Based in Philadelphia, they now serve the entire Mid-Atlantic region, from Washington to northern New Jersey, with plans to extend to New York later this year. In 2016, they launched their second affiliate location in Atlanta, Georgia, and the hub in Atlanta serves the Southeast, sourcing from farms in Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, and Tennessee. Right now, they have approximately 330 customers, includes hospitals, public and private schools, universities, colleges, retailers, restaurants, community organizations, and they also have a workplace CSA program. As of 2016, their annual sales were approaching $4 million in regional farm products, and they've experienced average annual growth for the last 3 years of 30%. I'd say those are pretty impressive statistics. So let's start with something that I think relates to the themes of today's talk. The title of this session is Markets and Farmers Working Together. How do you see your organization help markets and farmers work together? Because many of us know that's not always a natural fit. And as you talk about it, I'd hope you could talk a little bit about some of the disconnects you often see between expectations on both sides of the transaction and where you see yourselves filling that gap.
No small question. So yeah, I think that fundamentally our model focuses on improving farm viability and the accessibility of good food in all communities. And so our role really is connecting production and supply with the markets in a fair and transparent way. From the beginning, when we started our program in our community of Strawberry Mansion, we were trying to figure out how we improve the health and well-being of low-income consumers, only to realize that just a short hour to 2 hours away from our community, there were communities of small and mid-sized sustainable growers that were struggling to make ends meet. Mm-hmm. And we saw the opportunity to really shorten supply chains and increase transparency in the marketplace and connect these otherwise disparate communities around mutually beneficial goals. Democratizing access of good food for all people within the marketplace, and creating market opportunities for farmers. So that's fundamentally kind of the work that we're doing.
In terms of, we work with institutions primarily, so anchor institutions as we like to call them, and those are the people who are really serving thousands and employing thousands, and lots of people are eating there. So as an outreach team, part of our role is to really try and make that personal connection with a food service director, somebody who might say, hey, yeah, I shop at the farmer's market, but then they can't make the connection, the next leap into the decisions, the purchasing decisions that they're making at the institutional level to then serve those people.
How do you actually select some of the suppliers you work with? Obviously, you're looking to fulfill a certain level of scale. Are you finding that there's certain education or technical training that you need to supply or incorporate in order to achieve your goals?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really part of the service that we're providing for our farmers when we partner with them. A lot of them are ready to go wholesale right away, but we do a fair amount of technical assistance, things like, using grant funding to help get our farmers GAP certified. In the Mid-Atlantic, we had a goal of getting our farmers GAP certified by last summer, and we were excited to achieve that. So moving forward, all of our producers will be GAP certified in Georgia as well. So we have a goal to achieve that next year.
And of course, now that we have a USDA group GAP certified program, shameless plug, we've had several at this conference. Maybe we can talk to you about that.
Sure.
There may be an opportunity. I know you're really interested in not just, having business transactions, but really changing the culture of how transactions are conducted, making it possible and kind of the standard choice when institutions looking at food supply saying, let me see what my local farms have available. Can you talk a little bit about how you feel that you've come closer to achieving that objective, and what are you hearing from both the supply side and the buyer side about the changes that you've made?
Yeah, so I want to connect that back actually to your last question about how we select farmers. And there are beautiful regional differences in all the places that we work, and we always have to figure out the cultural context of the community where we're working. And so farmer selection and engagement in the Mid-Atlantic, where we've been able to achieve 100% GAP certification in the last couple of years, is different than the work we're doing in the Southeast with farmers in Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina. The amount of infrastructure that exists there to meet the needs of institutional food service is different. There's cultural products and different produce items that folks have focused on differently than in the Northeast. And then also, there are whole classes of farmers that have been excluded from market opportunities for generations. And so we're very deliberate about identifying farmers that are really struggling more than any others to hold on to their land, to sustain the values in their rural communities, and support them gaining market access. Leveraging funding from partners like USDA and private foundations to invest in infrastructure in these communities so that our farm partners have the capacity, have the systems to meet the expectations of the marketplace.
Wonderful. I was kind of along similar lines. I was curious about how you demonstrate your commitment to your social mission values. You started to discuss a few of them. I was wondering if your organization has any operating principles that you adhere to, or a mission statement, or something that is part of your practice. So, for example, I know that Red Tomato often talks about their dignity pricing. I was wondering about how you work out your transactions and make it your principles explicit about how you are trying to benefit every player in the supply chain. Would you talk about that a bit?
Well, getting back to your original, opening statement, transparency is definitely one of the biggest ways that we do that, and it's also a differentiator for food hubs across the country. We keep the source identity of the farm, from the invoice that the customer is looking at all the way down to the actual case of food when it's received at the loading dock, which other distributors don't have that capability, that they don't have those systems in place, and we do. So therefore, it's really easy for us to do reporting for our customers where they want to know the name of the farm, exactly where it's located, the mileage, the volume of sales, the amount of local food that they purchased that year. So those are all things that are built into our systems already.
Wonderful.
And also, I think building on that, a number of the other values that we really focus on within our organization, really, again, focused on community, building community, and not just in a neighborhood sense, but building community around local foods, getting folks to really celebrate the identity and the values of the farm partners that we work with, so that folks don't just know where their food came from, they know who grew it, they know the face of the farm worker, and that those farm workers were paid and treated fairly. They know information about people along the supply chain, although a shorter supply chain ideally.
Right.
But also really, and many of these themes are connected, but focusing on the ecology. We exclusively work with farmers that focus on restorative practices or sustainable growing practices within their community. So trying to support our growers in evolving their farming methods across we talk about it as a spectrum of sustainability, but always trying to do more to improve soil quality, water quality, labor practices, and again, as I think Jillian noted, the overarching themes of diversity and transparency in our work.
I'm very intrigued by the standards or the spectrum of standards or guidelines that you use. What are your influences? Are you using formal standards? Are these that your organization has developed by themselves? Are you doing it in partnership? Can you give me a little, and the audience, a little understanding of how you've come to establish the guidelines that you provide to your suppliers and stakeholders?
Well, part of the benefit in having a direct relationship with our growers is that we visit their farms and we walk around and we physically see what's going on at the farm. So that is one of the benefits of it. I would say that, like Haile mentioned, it is really a spectrum. I mean, it's kind of like how everybody has a different definition of local. So it's a little bit tricky to nail those things down. But I think what we do try and do is focus on the educational part of it in terms of trying to help our customers who are often food service directors and chefs who have some kind of personal connection to food, but they don't necessarily, like the other sustainability aspects of it don't necessarily resonate with them. So we do quite a bit of talking them through that, having those kind of awkward, hard conversations about what these things are and why it's important at the individual
So
level.
a lot of it's very customized, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think really trying to through communication, through sharing the stories of our growers, help educate the market that there's not just USDA certified USDA organic and conventional, right? These are not the only two goalposts in production. That there are a variety of other ways, everything from integrated pest management to chemical-free, to and then also by product, different practices, because our work is not just within the produce space. We literally try to represent the full diversity of agricultural products in a given region, as long as a producer can grow it safely, sustainably, at an appropriate degree of scale, so that it's at a wholesale price point. And it meets the needs of low-income and moderate-income families. So trying to promote the diversity of agriculture, diversity of growing practices, and really educate the market about the power that the market has in improving the quality of life within rural communities from an economic and an ecological perspective.
Well, that's a beautiful segue to my last question, I think. Since this is a metrics conference, a conference about impacts, I'm curious in your reporting and in your expectations, how you translate that into illustrating impacts, documenting impacts, sharing that message to your supporters, to the wider world, to prospective customers. Can you give me a little insight into, first of all, what you've seen in terms of returns to producers? What are your producers saying about the change? What are your buyers saying about the quality and that they've received since working with you? Love to hear it.
I mean, we absolutely always hear amazing feedback from our customers, especially in terms of the quality. That is number one, and I think we especially take a lot of pride in having excellent customer service as a distributor. I mean, distributors kind of have bad reputations, especially when it comes to local food, if there aren't really strong systems in place for cold chain and things like that. So we hear great things from our customers. It's the convenience, right? Trying to make it easier for them by just being able to place one order and access a lot of product. And on the farm side, we actually are just getting some initial results back from our farmer survey that we do once a year, and it's pretty awesome to see the things that they're telling us. I mean, things like they are, they're growing their farms in terms of land. They're using more sustainability practices. They're hiring more workers. They're paying their workers more. They're investing in infrastructure. I mean, these all seem like pretty tangible, real metrics in terms of how we are helping our farmers grow and helping sustainable agriculture to grow in the region.
It's really encouraging to hear.
Yeah. And
we'd love to hear more about it, actually. Please make sure to let us know what some of the things you're doing, because it helps us tell the general story. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, so one of the, we are a very data-driven company, and because we're also focused on our own economic model and our own viability, we're always focused and deep in our own numbers. Proving that regional food systems is not just an economically viable model, but a vision for the future of agriculture to some degree, for how people get food in their communities, and that it's a model that's financially, not just for the intermediary, but for all the partners along the supply chain, is a big part of what we're trying to demonstrate as an organization, as we're replicating to new regions in partnership with local communities, as we've demonstrated in Georgia, as we're planning potentially for Texas. And one of the, I think, biggest proof points in all of that is our broader economic investment that we've made cumulatively over the years, which exceeds at this point $25 million.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's a beautiful, uplifting note to end on. I thank you both for your time and sharing the story of your organization.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you.
And thank you all.
Thank you.